Hey, Jason here from Simply Swider. If your Samsung washer shows error codes 4C, 4E, or NF and won't fill with water, you're in the right place. I'll walk you through the exact steps to fix this problem. Good news is, most of these fill problems are actually pretty straightforward fixes that don't require expensive parts or service calls. Before we get started, if you run into any questions, jump into our Facebook group. Links in the description. We've got thousands of people helping each other fix their appliances, and I pop in there daily to help out. Now, here's what's actually happening when your Samsung washer won't fill. Most people think it's some major computer failure or a completely dead machine requiring expensive professional service. But here's the thing, it's usually just sediment buildup in those little inlet filters, a failed solenoid on the water valve, or water supply restrictions. Here's what I see in the field, and you'll see these stats on screen. Inlet filter clogs cause 60% of these problems. Defective water inlet valves account for 25%. Water supply issues make up 10%. The expensive stuff, pressure sensors and control boards, only 5% combined. Think in layers here. Water supply is your foundation, inlet filters are your gateway, the valve is your mechanical control, and sensors tell the brain what's happening. A fill failure will always live in one of those layers. Our job is to figure out which one with the fastest checks. So the number one culprit, and I've seen this countless times, is those little mesh screens inside your water valve getting clogged with debris, calcium, or sediment. Here's what happens. Hard water, recent plumbing work releasing sediment, or just naturally occurring junk in your water supply builds up on these filter screens and restricts the flow. You'll see those 4C, 4E, NF, or 14C codes pop up. Now, here's where most people mess up. They assume the valve is bad and spend 50 to 100 bucks replacing the whole assembly when all they needed to do was clean those screens. I had this lady last month call me in a panic about her washer not filling. Turned out the screens were packed solid with white calcium buildup. Took me 2 minutes to clean them out and she was back in business. Here's how to check this. And it takes about 5 minutes. First, turn off your water supply valves behind the washer, then disconnect the hoses at the washer end. Have a towel ready for drips. Now look inside those valve ports. You'll see colored mesh screens in there. If they look brown or white with buildup, that's your problem. Just remove them with needle nose pliers, rinse them clean, and reinstall. Sometimes the screens are damaged and need replacement, but often they're integrated into the valve assembly. Now, if those screens are clean but you're still not getting water, we're probably looking at a defective water inlet valve. What's happening here is either the electrical solenoid coil burns out or that mechanical plunger inside gets stuck from calcium buildup and corrosion. The valve just won't open even when it's getting power. You'll usually hear the washer humming or buzzing, but no water enters. Here's how to test it properly, and this is where a lot of DIYers go wrong. Here's the test. Set your multimeter to AC voltage. That's the wavy line symbol. Touch the probes to the valve terminals while the washer tries to fill. You should see about 120 volts. If you get 120 volts but no water flows, the valve is mechanically stuck and needs replacement. You can also do an ohm test with the power off. A good valve should show around 1000 ohms of resistance. If you get infinite resistance, that solenoid coil is electrically dead. Don't just assume the control board isn't sending power without testing for voltage at the valve. These valves generally aren't repairable. Those internal seals and springs aren't sold separately, so you're looking at replacement. Here's something that catches people off guard. Sometimes the problem isn't with the washer at all, it's with what's feeding it. I see this maybe 10% of the time, but it's super frustrating when it happens. The big culprit here is those flood-safe auto shut-off hoses. Here's the important part. Samsung specifically prohibits these auto shut-off hoses in their manual. They cause more problems than they solve by falsely triggering and restricting water flow. Problem is, they trip falsely and restrict water flow enough to trigger those NF or 4C errors. Other times, it's kinked hoses when someone pushed the machine back too far, or in colder climates, frozen pipes in garages. Here's the test. Disconnect those hoses from the washer and run them into a bucket to verify you've got full pressure flow. If the flow is weak or non-existent, don't start replacing washer parts. Fix your water supply. Replace those restrictive hoses with standard rubber or stainless steel braided ones. Now we're getting into the less common stuff. Pressure sensor failures, This little sensor monitors water level by reading air pressure changes in a connected tube, and when it fails, your washer gets confused about how much water's in there. It might think the tub is already full and refuse to fill, or it might think it's empty and cause an overfill situation. You'll see error codes pop up immediately when you start a cycle, or the washer might overfill and drain at the same time. Testing this requires a multimeter with frequency capability. You're looking for around 25 to 26 kilohertz when the tub is empty, or about 21 to 23 ohms on a resistance test. Here's where people get tripped up. They replace the water valve for a no fill symptom when the board is actually preventing fill because it thinks the tub is already full. Always check that air pressure hose too. If it's clogged or kinked, you'll get false readings. And the least likely culprit, we're talking less than 1% of cases, is main control board failure. What happens here is the relay on that main circuit board responsible for sending 120 volts to the water valve fails. Could be from a power surge, just component age, or sometimes pest damage. Don't ask me how I know that, but roaches can really mess up electronics. The way you identify this is by measuring voltage at the water valve wire harness during a fill cycle. If you're getting 0 volts after verifying the door lock is engaged and the cycle started properly, then you might be looking at a board issue. But here's the thing, this is the most misdiagnosed problem out there. People blame the board and spend 2 to 300 bucks when the real issue was a $40 sensor or a loose wire connection. Always test the valve and sensors before assuming it's the board. The water inlet valve, this is your electromechanical gate that opens to let hot and cold water into the tub when it gets that 120-volt signal from the control board. When these fail, it's usually the solenoid coil burning out, that mechanical plunger seizing up from calcium buildup, or the plastic body cracking. You'll hear humming or buzzing with no water flow, super slow fill, leaking from the valve body, or sometimes it'll keep filling even when the washer's unplugged. That's a mechanical seal failure. You're looking at 50 to 100 bucks for the part, and this is definitely a DIY repair if you're comfortable working around live voltage for testing. Just remember to verify you've got 120 volts AC during the fill cycle and check the resistance. Should be around 1000 ohms. Don't assume it's bad without testing, and definitely don't replace the whole control board thinking that's the problem. The pressure sensor, also called the water level switch, monitors water level through air pressure changes in a connected tube. When this little guy fails, it's usually electronic frequency drift or that internal diaphragm getting stuck. Your washer might overfill and flood, refuse to fill because it thinks it's already full, or stop mid-cycle. Testing requires a multimeter with frequency capability. Samsung specific is around 25 to 26 kilohertz when empty. You're looking at 40 to 90 bucks for the part. This is a medium difficulty repair. You'll need to access the console area and make sure that air tube is clear and properly connected. Here's where people mess up. They replace the inlet valve for a no fill symptom when the board is actually stopping fill due to a false full reading from this sensor. The main control board is the brain that sends power to valves and reads sensor data. When it fails, it's usually a burnt relay, cracked solder joint, or pest damage. You'll measure 0 volts at the valve even though you've selected the right cycle. This is the expensive one, 150 to 300 bucks or more. It's also the most misdiagnosed component. I can't tell you how many times I've seen people replace boards when the real problem was a cheap sensor or broken wire. Always verify voltage output at those board connectors before assuming the board is bad. If you're not comfortable with electrical testing, this might be where you call someone like me. All right, if you're dealing with faulty parts, let's talk about what you're looking at cost-wise and which ones make sense to tackle yourself versus calling someone like me. The good news is most of these repairs are pretty DIY friendly if you're comfortable with basic tools and following safety procedures. Now, before we wrap up, you can see right there on your screen some of the most common Samsung washer models that experience these fill problems. You might spot your own model in there. The pattern I see is that Samsung's inlet valve filter screens have a really fine mesh that makes them super susceptible to clogging, even with minor sediment in the water supply. Front-load models in unheated garages are prone to cracked valve bodies from freezing, and top loaders can have wiring harness issues from vibration breaking those pressure sensor connections. That's how you tackle Samsung washer fill problems and those 4C, 4E, and NF error codes. Let me give you the step-by-step checklist you can follow. Step 1. Check water supply and hose flow into a bucket. Step 2. Remove and clean those inlet filter screens. Step 3, test the water inlet valve with a multimeter. Step 4, check the pressure sensor if you're still having issues. Step 5, only then consider the control board. This order will save you time and money. Most of the time, cleaning those inlet screens or replacing a $50 valve will get you back up and running, way cheaper than calling someone like me. The key takeaway is don't assume it's the expensive stuff. Test your way through the system methodically. And here's something most people don't know. This failure pattern isn't unique to Samsung. Anytime you've got fine mesh filters and solenoid valves dealing with mineral rich water over time, you're going to see these same issues across brands. The diagnostic approach stays the same. If you guys know someone who's having appliance troubles, please send them the link to this video or a link to my channel where I have tons of other videos showing how to fix pretty common issues with appliances, sometimes for free or as little cost as possible. It sure beats having a repairman come out and spending several hundred for them to fix it when it could be something so simple. If this helped you get your Samsung washer filling again, hit that like button and drop a comment below. Let me know which fix worked for you. Really helps other people with the same problem. And if you haven't already, please subscribe to the channel. We'll get this out to more folks who need to save some time and money. Thanks for watching, and I hope you guys have a great day.